Hey everyone, it's Anne, and welcome to my Patreon exclusive behind the scenes commentary for Where Do We Go From Here. In this series, I talk a little bit about the inspiration behind my original songs and the writing and production process of how they came to be in their current forms, and you get to see me in a little bit of a different format than usual, just talking without too much editing. If you want to hear the full song first, go ahead and skip to this point in the video. Otherwise, let's talk about where do we go from here. The first thing I think is notable about this song is that with a lot of my other original songs, there's a really long gap, sometimes years long, between me writing it at home and it actually getting recorded and produced and released. This one does not have such a long gap, and that's because it was written entirely in the studio. So this one was written in September 2021 in the studio in Los Angeles, and it was released June 2022. So compared to my other songs, because some of those are like 3 or more year gaps, this one is really short, and that was because it was a co-write. So it was all written on the spot in a day. Now, I co-wrote this one with Bill Leffler, who's based in LA. He's the producer from my last EP, and there's a lot of different ways to co-write, but how it generally works when I co-write with a producer is that the producer is sort of in charge of the music part of it, and then I'm sort of in charge of the melody and lyrics part of it. So in this particular case, producers do their producer thing, which is they're always coming up with bits of songs or beats, if they're that kind of producer. And then when you sit down to write something, they probably have like a whole folder of things they've been working on recently that they'll show you and be like, do any of these jump out at you? Do you want to start working on any of these? Basically, maybe they have something that's like a verse and chorus idea, or what they're thinking of as a verse and chorus, kind of as a starting point to build a song off of. At that point, when you're looking at ideas, nothing is super set in stone, so the key could change, the tempo could change, certain instruments could change or be added. There's almost no song structure. There's usually just like, I think this is going to be the verse, I think this is what I was thinking that the chorus would be, but it's still very flexible. It's not as if there's like a whole karaoke track already made for you and you're just sitting down to write lyrics on it. Although sometimes things do work like that, but I don't generally work like that because I like to have a little bit more flexibility in the structure and not be so restricted when it comes to writing. So Bill showed me a variety of ideas in the studio that day, including this one that later became this song, which was originally called Pearls, because you have to name it something when you're working on it. You can't just name it Untitled Song Idea number 578, because how would you ever remember? So what he showed me was probably about this long, like a verse and a chorus. This is the instrumental of the final version of the song, so this one is completely polished and fleshed out. That day, it wasn't. We did add a couple things in, but it was still the basic idea and the vibe that I got from this song. This is our pre-chorus with the little vocal effects. And going into the chorus here. Obviously those oohs, those are me. Those weren't in the original track idea. Anyway, that was about what it started out as, and then we started looping it. We started copying sections to make it about the length of a full song, and started adding stuff to it. The first lines I came up with were, "Where do we go from here?" which is on the chorus, the part that you just heard. This was a case of very much the lyrics of the song being influenced by what I was feeling in that moment, but also really being driven by the mood that I was getting from the instrumental. Like, when I heard it, I knew it just had to be a certain type of song with this certain type of feeling in it. And as I was sitting there listening to it, this is the first thing that came to me. Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? We can walk the world over. So where do we go from here? So the first lines of this song that I wrote were something like that. The addition of "we can walk the whole world over" to make it fit better, and the little "where do we go from here" going up on that line, those were kind of later additions to make it more interesting. And those are things that Bill, the producer, would kind of have opinions on as well. But generally, he will kind of offer little bits of advice like that, or little ideas, or I'll give him like 3 verse ideas and he'll look at them and be like, I like this one better. But usually most of the melody and the lyrics in this kind of producer co-write situation will come from me, and then the whole music track side will come from the producer. So when I got "Where Do We Go From Here" and I started writing in my little notebook, I started thinking about my feelings and my recent experiences, and I decided that I wanted this to be a song that would work on 2 levels. What I mean by that is a literal level and a sort of higher figurative, metaphorical level. The song was going to be about a road trip, basically. And I wanted it to work as a song about an actual road trip, but that could also be read as talking about a more abstract, like, journey of life type thing. And before I go any further into talking about the meaning of the song, I do feel like I want to give a disclaimer, like, this is the meaning of the song to me. This was how I was feeling when I wrote it, but that doesn't mean that that's the only right answer. In fact, I think even to me personally, the meaning could change over time, even though I know what I had in mind when I started it. And honestly, I don't want to dictate what the meaning is to you. I want you to take whatever meaning you feel like it is. Because once I release it into the world, it's no longer only mine, right? And a song becomes important to you because you take some meaning from it that applies to your own personal situation. And I don't want to stop people from doing that by doing this series, because that is something that I would love for people to do. I'm just here to talk about how it started, and the rest of it is in your hands to interpret as you wish. With all that being said, I wrote this song after returning from visiting my husband's home area of Spain for the first time. So it was the first time I had been in that area, it was the first time I had been in his hometown, the first time I had met his family. I was there for a couple months, and it was a month of great experiences, really happy times, and a lot of little road trips around the area. So when I say that I wrote this about a road trip, those are the road trips that I had in mind. And there's a couple references to that, roundabouts, of course. So many roundabouts. This is Europe we're talking about, so it's just completely, absolutely full of roundabouts. Also the references to greener grass, because it's a very green area, lots of rolling hills, very beautiful landscapes, and the sun breaking through, the sun shining because it was summer and it was warm. And I was thinking about really being in the car, being in the passenger seat, because I was in the passenger seat most of the time, because the cars are manual and I do not know how to drive a manual transmission yet. But I am going to be learning, probably in a couple months when I go back. Anyway, that's a different song. But I was in the passenger seat, I was staring out the window, and I was looking at these new landscapes, unfamiliar landscapes, you could even say, but still feeling a sense of belonging, feeling like I had that special guide with me. And like I said about the 2 levels of this song, new places, new physical places that we were going to in the car on a road trip, and also new figurative places, new places in life, new life stage, and so those are kind of the emotions and the experiences that I'm sure you can tell as you think about the song's lyrics. That was what was driving the song. Overall, a very happy time. It was very peaceful, very relaxed, almost idyllic, almost dreamy, and I think that was why those emotions and those experiences came through when I heard this music. It is a very relaxed song. It's almost understated, and that was a choice made on purpose to kind of help transmit those feelings. As I was listening to the instrumental and coming up with the words, I knew that it wasn't something that should be overdone. It shouldn't be pushed. It is a peaceful, meditative feeling that is about being okay where you are and being okay with where you're going to end up, even if you don't know exactly where you're going to end up. One other little part that I think might be funny to share is this little vocal chop sample that's in the instrumental. Well, it's in the full song, but you can hear it better in the instrumental. Here it is. Here it is again. That part we always called Intergalactic Father, because for some reason we decided that it sounded like the voice was saying Intergalactic Father, so whenever this part would come on, we'd be like, Intergalactic Father. And that little vocal thing was a sample that was in the original song idea, I think, so we don't actually know what it's saying, because that's not something that I recorded. That's somebody else's voice, so they could be saying Intergalactic Father. We don't know. I mean, that's my best guess. We also knew, listening to the music and hearing the lyrics of this song, that it was definitely a summer song, and so that's why we decided to release it now. And that's also partially why there was such a shorter than usual gap between writing and release, because it did end up working out the timeline in that way. If it had been a super wintry song, for example, it was written in September, so I probably would have waited until fall, winter of this year to release it, and that would have made it a longer gap, more like my usual pacing. So that's a little bit about this song, and now enjoy the full version of Where Do We Go From Here. It's an unfamiliar landscape, but it feels like home. The sun is breaking through, I'm feeling less alone. On to the land of greener grass, we'll be there before you know. On to the towns where the names are new, going down the road. Roundabout after roundabout, one crossroads to the next. Let's just stop and enjoy the view. We'll never be here again. Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? We can walk the whole world over. So where do we go from here? crossroads to the next. Where do we go